Blood Hunt issue 3 is a well-executed middle issue of this particular event. It bridges the openings of all of the stories so far. It reacts to last issue's cliffhanger, of course, and then it sends everyone off into new adventures. First thing first, though, Blade checks in with Vampire T'Challa, who has succeeded in his 3-issue miniseries. Okay, that's weird, because only a single issue's been released at the point of me writing this. Actually, issue 2 just came out. He has found Blade's prize, where it has laid since it fell in the days of old Atlantis. Blade tells T'Challa to have the translocation drives spin up. So, yeah, apparently they had teleporters back in the days of old Atlantis. The Scarlet Witch then says some sassy stuff about how the Avengers are going to win this one, and the Blood Coven came back short a member from issue 2, Blade. Looks like you guys might suck a little bit, referencing the death of, I believe it was Megrim in issue 2, so good job, Wanda. Down on Earth, Vampire Miles attacks the assembled forces of Astral Form Doctor Strange, Clea, Hunter's Moon, Tigra, Dracula, and Brielle Brooks, the daughter of Blade. And actually, he is specifically going for Brielle. Everyone else can get screwed. Clea busts out the good old Crimson Bands of Sidorak, a comic book classic, and keeps him immobile. That gives Doctor Strange a chance to hit him with the Eye of Agamotto, freeing Miles' mind from Blade's influence. It turns out, Blade had specifically sent him after Brielle. Miles was programmed for it. But everyone up to this point has been talking around the fact that Blade is leaving the bad guys, and they all kind of look at Dracula now that Brielle has been brought into this, and they're like, bro, why didn't you tell her about her dad? And rightly so, Dracula's like, oh, so you want Dracula to tell the daughter of his greatest enemy that said greatest enemy is trying to kill her? You expect me to tell Brielle that she has to kill her father? You know, Blade? And Brielle, of course, is like, what? And so, yeah, that's the deal. Brielle is the only one who can strike Blade down, at least according to Dracula. The group now starts sniping at each other, because, you know, one of them's Dracula, and the rest are superheroes. Hunter's Moon reminds them that they need to save, you know, the world before they can battle each other. And just as they start to talk strategy, Brielle books it. Dracula and Miles give chase, spinning them off into their own tie-ins. The Avengers say that they're going to handle the Blade problem. They'll draw his attention and keep him busy, while the others deal with the other problems, most notably, the Dark Force problem blocking off the Earth. Hunter's Moon and Tigra are going to break into Asgard and do something. Most likely break out their god. Hunter's Moon god, I guess. Tigra doesn't really worship him. They're going to break Khonshu out of the Asgardian prison that he's been held in back since he tried to take over the planet. That was the thing. Doctor Strange and Clea are going to go to the one man that they do not want to ask for help, and so they head to Latveria. You might say that they're looking pretty doomed. My name is Ben, and this is Breakdown's continued coverage of Blood Hunt Episode 8. Brielle has to kill who? Captain Marvel then has Captain America give a rousing speech to the masses. He declares to the world that those who have died shall be avenged, those who are alive shall be protected. They have fought off countless threats before, telling each one of them no. The vampires will be just one more on the list. This enrages Blade. He thought that he had humanity's spirit broken. He thought that humanity was wounded, easy prey just waiting to be finished off. It seems he was wrong, and he wants this finished. Blade has T'Challa teleport the Temple of the First Blasphemy from beneath Wakanda to Central Park. It will be the Avengers' tombstone. From a storytelling standpoint, I have to admit that this isn't the most thrilling issue of Blood Hunt that I've ever read, but structurally it is incredibly necessary to the overall story. McKay is tying a bunch of different comics together, he is spinning things off into other comics, he's picking things up from other comics, and he's still moving the narrative forward. There's a lot of work being done in this issue. Having now read quite a few comics from author Jed McKay, I know that he is a writer who writes for the whole story as opposed to the single issue. He's more of a trade writer, if you want to call it that, or a story arc writer. This can make a single issue of anything that he is writing feel a little bit slow or maybe boring or kind of unimportant. But generally speaking, once you're able to read the entire story that he has been writing, it flows very well and has been generally very enjoyable for me. There's a reason I've read so many of Jed MacKay's comics, and it's because I think they're good. Bloodhunt already making use of the end goal of Black Panther Bloodhunt is really odd, though, for a crossover in particular, and this one specifically. Most crossover events tend to have their tie-ins fall into one of two camps, right? The first camp is where everything is just happening in a liminal space. Everything is happening at the same time as everything else until a story has ended and you can place it in a chronological timeline. This is currently books like the Spider-Man tie-in, the Midnight Suns tie-in, the Strange Academy tie-in, Avengers. Could these stories matter in the main story? Sure, maybe, eventually. Do they matter right now? No, they do not. Best case scenario, they will matter when the story ends, and hopefully they matter if you're reading them and you're having a good time. The other camp of tie-in is the sort of story that is directly tied in. Right now, so far, this has been books like Doctor Strange and Vengeance of Moon Knight. Notably, both of those books are written by Jed MacKay, so it makes sense that they can tie into the main narrative a little bit more easily. But the Black Panther tie-in is being written by Cheryl Eaton. So right now, it stands out as the one tie-in that is actually going to have an impact on the narrative, despite having the greatest creative distance from it. But it is still a bit odd to essentially skip 2 issues of the Black Panther miniseries and then reference it already. MacKay has essentially spoiled the ending of Black Panther Bloodhunt. T'Challa accomplishes his mission, he finds the Temple for Blade, and he sends it to New York. We don't really need to read that comic anymore. That's a bad move from a selling more comics perspective. Unless they're going, well, Ben is only going to buy this comic if it matters, so let's show how it matters early, so now he'll buy the next 2 issues. And if so, man, that's some real 4D chess there, Marvel. But it's not working on me. I'm still not sold on Black Panther. Ha! The only story element potentially left to the Panther series is whether or not T'Challa was probably able to, like, sabotage something or do some kind of twist where he's got like a knife poised behind Blade's heart kind of thing, and then it's going to pay off later on in Bloodhunt. And that does feel like something T'Challa would do. And, of course, the main thrust of the narrative is anything personal that matters to T'Challa as part of his emotional story of being turned into a vampire. But I'm not reading Bloodhunt for Black Panther, so I don't terribly care right now. The Miles stuff in this issue almost got me shopping. I did check out Miles' ongoing series, which dropped the first issue of its Bloodhunt tie-in the same week as this issue, but it doesn't look like it's going to affect the main narrative of Bloodhunt. Miles literally runs out of this comic and back into his own, and that frees up a little bit more of my money, thank God. In another weird move, and spoilers, skip ahead a minute or so, in a weird move, issue 3 of Bloodhunt dropped, which has Miles as a vampire on the cover, and Marvel already started talking about the next arc of Miles' story as a vampire, where he's going to be hunted by a group of ladies calling themselves the Blood Hunters, spinning out of Bloodhunt. So, like, Miles is still going to be a vampire, at least for a little bit, at the end of Bloodhunt, which, again, is just a weird storytelling choice. But I'm kind of glad that they're going to... If Miles is going to get turned into a vampire, I'm glad that they're going to take some time to explore that concept, as opposed to just fix him by the end of this and then it's done. It does really feel like a throwaway story element in this particular issue, though, given how important everything else feels like it is with the rest of the cast in this book. Hunter's Moon and Tigra are going to raise an army to fight the vampires. That's a big thing. Doctor Strange and Clea looks like they're going to team up with Doctor Doom to try and solve the Dark Force problem. That's a big thing. And then the Avengers are going to go round 3 on the Blood Coven. That's all big, important story stuff. Miles literally just, like, swung through in order to pitch a tie-in. This just feels a little schmeh, you know? And to be fair, I do super appreciate how much work is being done in Bloodhunt to invest us in Miles' story before sending him on his way. McKay and the various other writers involved in this event have done a great job creating an event here. So far, a lot of the tie-ins at least feel necessary and important. There are a handful that feel like they're either just a fun comic reading experience, or B, an attempt to make more money, but this is a complaint that comic fans often have that doesn't really bother me a lot. Marvel is a business. They're a company. They're trying to sell you comics. That is the goal. Of course they want you to buy comics. The trick is just to make a comic that you feel is worth buying. Obviously, for me, a big part of tie-in shopping is it important to the main narrative, but I do think it is okay to just have a comic that's a good, fun comic that is a contained experience, and you move on with your life. Not everything needs to be part of a tightly connected shared narrative. Do I like that stuff more? Absolutely. Of course I do. But the stuff that stands alone can be just as entertaining. So, if you want to buy something, then buy it. And if you don't want to buy something, then don't buy it. That's okay. We don't all have to be upset about it all the time. That said, the main story elements for the rest of the cast work incredibly well, in my opinion. The Midnight Mission members are probably going to bust Khonshu out of Asgardian jail, which might not just save the world in regard to the main Bloodhunt narrative. With Khonshu now freed, he might be able to resurrect our favorite son, Mark Spector, aka Moon Knight, which will obviously have an impact on the Vengeance of Moon Knight corner of the Marvel Universe. Marvel has already announced that they're doing a miniseries called Phases of the Moon Knight, which is going to take place after Vengeance of Moon Knight and introduce a whole bunch of different Moon Knight characters, but I wouldn't be surprised if at the end of this year you see a solicitation for a new Moon Knight ongoing series. Strange and Clea visiting Doctor Doom is a real interesting story move to me. We were shown a scene in issue 1 of Bloodhunt of people fleeing across the Latverian border for safety. They ran into Latveria in order to be safe from the vampires, and I missed the implication there that Doctor Doom might have a larger role in our overall narrative. Doom has some kind of way of preventing vampires from attacking his country. If you can take that and apply it to a global scale, that would be amazing. But approaching Doom is a really gutsy choice for these two, because he has bad blood with both Doctor Strange and, most recently, Clea. Back when Strange died in the Death of Doctor Strange miniseries, Doom then tried to take the mantle of the Sorcerer Supreme from Clea, who Strange had left it to. Naturally, Clea did not give it up, but if there's one thing that Doctor Doom does hold, it is a grudge, so I wouldn't be surprised if he is especially smug about them having to come for him for help. I could absolutely see Doctor Doom aiding them in this, if only to save the world so that one day he can rule it. Plus, Doctor Doom is one of the only people to have read from the Darkhold and not gone insane back in the 2021 Darkhold mini-event. Strange does have a vested interest in the Darkhold because of the Montesi formula held within, so maybe that's why he's approaching Doom here. Maybe Doom memorized a portion of the Montesi formula and he has weaponized it as a defense of Latveria. Something along those lines. Who knows at this point. I'm excited to find out why. Doctor Doom is one of those characters who's either a really well-written character or he's a terribly written character, and I'm interested to see Jed McKay's take on him. The speech from Sam Wilson is honestly really good. It's one of those things that I kind of wish I could have just read on the podcast. During his time as Captain America, Sam has honestly faced a lot of self-doubt as far as his comfortability in the role. Steve Rogers feels like he was born to be Captain America. Sam Wilson has worked to be Captain America, and he has felt it himself. He has quit in the role a couple of times, and even in his own comics, he wasn't really the speechifying type. But McKay has him grow into the role here. When you look to Captain America, you see hope, freedom, honesty. You see someone who's going to fight for you. And sure, Falcon does have a flight suit, and he's able to fly, and he's got a shield. But otherwise, the Falcon's a normal dude. Out of the group of surviving Avengers we have at this point, he is one of the most normal people you have. And so he's got that ground-to-ground connection, and I think it really works. Sam makes mentions of other world-shattering comic events, which, as a geek, I like. I just like the callbacks and the references, like when Null invaded during the King in Black crossover, when the Kotati invaded during the Empire crossover, when Galactus has shown up, and that's a couple different times. It's just really a cool moment in general as a comic fan. This issue was a very solid middle issue in a very fun event up to this point. Next episode, we're going to follow up on Brielle's story before we get back into any of the other story elements, as it's the most tied in with Blood Hunt issue 3. She's going to team up with Daredevil, Dracula has to hunt her down, and Brielle really comes to grips with her perceived role in this story. We will be covering Dracula, Blood Hunt issue 2, as Breakdown's coverage of Blood Hunt continues. If you enjoyed this episode of Breakdown, please make sure to hit that like button, and if you are not subscribed to the show, then click on that as well. I love getting feedback, and I would really appreciate it if you did so. If you have any questions, concerns, or would like to suggest a comic or a series to me, Breakdown can be found on Facebook, Instagram, and on a variety of podcast platforms, with links in the description for this episode below, as well as the email cbbreakdown@gmail.com. Thank you for your time and attention.